to recovery from addiction and past traumas. Here, surrounded by the tranquility of nature, we offer a safe space for renewal and growth. At Hidden Oaks, we understand that the journey to recovery can be challenging. That's why our compassionate team is here to support you every step of the way, providing personalized treatment programs tailored to your unique needs. Take the first step towards reclaiming your life today. Call us at 972-932-2033 or visit our website at resolutionshealthcare.com to learn more. Remember, the path to recovery runs through Hidden Oaks. Let us help you find your way. Hello and welcome to Breaking the Cycle. My name is Alan Hyde, and tonight we are joined by our special guests, Dr. Apri Click and Micah Smith Lowe. They are both clinicians here in the Dallas area, and they are the co-owners of Dallas Therapeutic Services. And tonight we're going to get into what got them into their practice and how it's just developing in the community. We'll probably also be talking a lot about just kind of the service that they are offering through the 9 clinicians currently at the practice. But how are you ladies doing this evening?
We're doing good.
Great.
We're excited, nervous.
Yeah.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's good to have you, and we'll settle into the conversation and see where it takes us. But you guys started Dallas Therapeutic Services when?
2018, I believe, right?
Started seeing clients 2019
Yeah.
early.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And are you guys primarily seeing clients in person or online or both?
I think most of our clinicians see a mix. Primarily, I see in person. I think, Micah, you have a day where you're virtual, right?
Yeah, it's about a mix.
Yeah.
Maybe half and half.
Yeah, and you guys were sharing as well. So for those, as you guys follow along with us tonight, you have 9 clinicians, right? So I imagine plenty of individuals watching this in the Dallas-Fort Worth area could turn to you guys for support. What are some of the primary, we could focus on what you two treat maybe first, then we could talk a little bit more about the clinicians you've brought on. But what can individuals listening tonight expect if they were going to contact you? What would draw them into your practice?
You want to take that one, or you want me to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. Okay, so we do have a mix. We have clinicians who have just about every background and specialty. And personally, my background and specialty is in military and first responders. So I deal with a lot of complex PTSD, substance use, all the things that kind of come along with that environment and that population. In addition, I do psychological testing. So things like diagnostic testing, autism, IQ, learning disorders, etc. And then do you want to do yours and we'll talk about the group?
Yeah, sure. So I help out with psychological testing also, but primarily in terms of therapy. I specialize in treating OCD, so obsessive compulsive disorder, and related disorders. So I do a lot of exposure therapy, exposure-based therapies. And I also treat trauma, and I work with the LGBTQ plus population. So work with a lot of trans clients, and then there's a lot of overlap with trauma and my queer community.
Sure.
So that's kind of my niche.
Yeah. I also saw that you do some EMDR as well.
Yeah, we both do EMDR.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I actually think almost everybody in our practice is EMDR trained. I'm an EMDR consultant. She's about to be an EMDR consultant. So we've been working our way steadily toward getting that certification.
It's been a bit of a theme lately with the topics we've been talking about on the show, because we just did our in-person event and we had the 3 ladies on, 2 of which were EMDR trained and talking about a lot of trauma treatment.
Yeah, EMDR, Apri actually had to wring my arm to get trained in EMDR years ago because I came from more of a cognitive-based trauma approach. So I I used CPT, cognitive processing therapy, and she told me about EMDR. And I said, that sounds like some hokey pokey, like
Yeah.
that doesn't make any sense to me. So I was a huge skeptic. And then I got trained, still remained skeptical until I started using it. And I love it, and I've used it personally. So
The question I always ask with EMDR, especially when I have the clinicians who do it, I always ask, are you a light bar person? Do you do the tapping? Are you a hand person? What type of EMDR are you ladies?
I'm a tapper.
You're a tapper?
Yeah, I have the little buzzy tappers that go in your
nice.
hand.
I used to use my arm, and then that got tiring. So
Yeah.
I graduated to the tappers.
I
Yeah,
know.
you build
So
up your shoulders.
Yeah.
have to increase our health insurance if we kept doing that one.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. We had a local clinician, Troy Calloway, a couple months ago. He talked about how he has the sound stimulation flowing on the sides of his room. It's interesting to see the different ways people implement the bilateral
Yeah.
stimulation. Yeah.
So in your own practice with therapy, have you ever considered doing EMDR, or do you?
It's been kind of touched on with supervisors I've had
Yeah.
over the years. I had a supervisor who really thought, and I kind of resonate with this, that I'm more suited for like somatic work. Most of the groups that I would do, I just had a natural affinity for that.
Gotcha.
In my practice currently, I work with mostly 12-steppers, and mostly the family members of alcoholics, and there's a lot of somatic work to be done there.
Sure.
Especially with like the recent research on ACEs that have come out that show like they're coming in with stress-related symptoms and no one knows why, and it's a lot of that, the somatic symptoms, like what they're storing in their body. So I think as my trauma treatment develops from like that, some of those more base relational approaches, I'll probably do somatic stuff before I would do EMDR.
Yeah.
Although I've been more and more convinced over the last couple of weeks, bringing on all these clinicians in the area who are practicing it.
Yeah.
You might become a converted skeptic like me.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I'm open to it. Leave it to us therapists to be open-minded.
Yes.
What brought you two together to start Dallas Therapeutic Services?
So let's see. I was already in the mindset of wanting to start a private practice. So this would have been back in the 2018 time period. You're very broke when you start a private practice.
Yeah.
And so I started working part-time at a hospital, Green Oaks, and that's where she was working full-time at the time. And so we just started to kind of bond and talk a little bit about our shared experiences, the populations we wanted to help, et cetera. And I think it just kind of naturally developed, convinced her to leave her, nice, safe, easy paycheck kind of job.
PHP job, yeah.
And dive into the unknown world of private practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we started off small. We were in this tiny corner area of an office and grew very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talk often about how our styles really complement each other in terms of running a business, because we're very different. So Apri is like really big thinker, big ideas. I mean, if she thinks about something, she can make it happen, anything at all. And I am more, I don't know, how would you describe me?
I actually would say you're the one who can make a dream happen. So she's the one who can actually look at all the logistics of something and be like, Apri, this is nonsense. What are you talking about? Or, okay, but we have to do all of these steps first.
Yeah.
So she's really good about actually making the plans come together.
Right.
So,
Why, thank you. Well, so she had these big ideas for the private practice, right? While we were working together at PHP, and that's how she convinced me. If she can talk you into something, she has the big ideas, and I thought, she sounds like she could, like, this will be successful.
Yeah, well, just from everything I've seen and talking with Vinny and who their center sponsors the show, it's like you guys have really taken off, and it's wonderful to get to connect with the thinkers in the area who are stepping out, offering the services. And I heard a moment ago that you guys were starting a group in the area. Did I hear that correctly?
starting what in the area?
Was it a group session of some kind? I heard you guys mention that you were going to share your backgrounds, and then
Oh,
did I hear
Oh,
it
the
incorrect?
rest of the group. Oh, the specialties for the rest of the
That's
group.
what I was like, are we
Yeah.
starting a group? Mike and I did not talk
never
about
mind.
that.
They
We
can
have
wait.
ideas for those.
Yeah. Well, they can wait. We can talk about the other clinicians on your practice in a little bit. But so do you guys do group therapy sessions at your practice currently, or is it all individual?
So we had really big goals for group therapy. If you're ever in our space, you'll see we have this beautiful group room. And then COVID happened like a month after we built the group room.
We had actually developed curriculum for specific groups. I was going to do a CBT for insomnia group. You were going to do one reducing isolation, I think.
Yep.
And then COVID, like right when we were starting, COVID hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so things shifted.
That's true. I think we all started to devote more time to individual therapy and psychological testing. We have recently started to try to get those back. We have an autism parenting group that's about to get started again. And so we have some of these that are in the background that we're really excited about, but we're also about to move spaces in the new year. And so to some degree, we're also, let's just wait and see what happens in this new space.
Yeah. What was that like being a clinician, right? As seasoned clinicians starting a practice and then a pandemic hits,
Ooh.
being on the front line.
How'd you feel about it?
It was a lot at the time. My wife and I were living in a 700 square foot 1-bedroom apartment. And so and she's also a therapist. So trying to, work every day from home, no space, no privacy. I felt like it was difficult at times to be on for, clients whenever I also felt like drained because I wasn't getting any human interaction outside of the computer screen. But then it really, like, telehealth took off, and I think that's a positive that came out of it is more people were seeking therapy.
Yeah.
And we got through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
Do you remember in the beginning we tried to do some like fun group activities? Like we would do virtual games with all the staff members.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we tried to do some things to keep people engaged.
We did like a virtual social distance holiday card with all of our faces.
We did do
yeah,
that.
I remember
Screens.
those.
Yes.
Dancing around like elves.
Yes,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
So we tried to do some things in the beginning. Honestly, I think most of us were ready to come back to the office within just a couple months. And so then it was more of how do we make this safe? A lot of Lysol.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
cleaning.
But we transitioned back to the office almost as soon as we could.
Yeah.
That's good. And
Yeah.
I heard things, because I was in California at the time where I'm from, and it took a lot longer to open up there. I heard
Yeah.
they opened things up quicker here. And yeah, but I remember those were kind of my like last tenured years in treatment centers. So I was working at a treatment center in Newport Beach right across from the beach.
Oh, wow.
And when I would go into work in the morning, it was, the only time in my life I'd ever seen that beach as a ghost town. And it was so eerie.
Wild.
Yeah.
What a time.
Yeah, it was a very interesting time. I mean, it still is. I mean, the climate is, you can still feel it. People
Yeah.
still talk about it. But we've bounced back a lot, in community settings, which is good to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt kind of like, I guess I kind of share. I felt honored, because I was still kind of young in the field. I mean, I was in that first decade, kind of on that latter part, but I felt honored to, like, everyone was spinning, and to be somewhat seated as best we could felt like the right place to be,
Yeah.
I'm curious if you guys felt that too.
It was an interesting time to be in a role of leadership, trying to develop how do you help your clinicians, your clients, each other when you have no idea what's going on in the world, or you're just tired of your own house.
Yes.
So I think Micah and I spent a lot of time talking about how are we supporting our clinicians, as well as how are we not going insane. But I think it was a unique position to be in. And I'm pretty proud of the stuff that we did to try to help. I mean, not saying we got all the right things, but we tried what we could to help our staff to be able to do the work that they needed to do.
Yeah, and I think still be, figure out all the kind of background stuff in terms of like regulation and privacy and infrastructure to be able to really ramp up video, virtual sessions for our clients. So
Yeah. You had made a good point. I remember before COVID that it was really difficult to get people to buy into virtual sessions. I remember even as a clinician, like, I don't know about all that,
Yes.
and then COVID just changed it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And now some of my clients, that I've had that long, that used to come in person, they just stuck with virtual.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's convenient.
it is. It is. Yeah, my longest standing client, I worked with him in treatment, and then when we transitioned him out, we would meet in person, and then COVID hit, and we've been virtual ever since. And it allowed me to facilitate a move across state lines.
Yeah.
I would have never done it. Well, I mean, I would have done it eventually, but I would not have done it when I did if I hadn't have been doing predominantly virtual
Yeah.
work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 Gave us access to a lot of resources I don't think we were using very fully beforehand.
Yeah. Here's kind of a funny question. What do you ladies think about BetterHelp?
Oh,
It's a heated question. I don't
It
know about a
is,
funny
it
question. I guess in all honesty, we're not the world's biggest fans.
Me neither.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I have no qualms. I'll say it on the internet. I don't like them.
I think that local, small, clinician-run private practices are in danger because
Yeah.
of, large online venture capital backed.
Yeah. Yeah. You know,
Groups.
I guess I rest assured in the sense of like I guess it's kind of, for me, I view it like in a spiritual realm almost, of like, if the primary goal is, which it is, because you see them like sponsoring like major outlets. It's like, if the primary goal for them is financial, and what we're trying to do in these realms is emotional and spiritual and help people heal, those two roads never converge for very long. They may be around for a decade, maybe even 20 years, but those kind of things are always really, I'm curious to see like, well, what's really going on there, and what's the consequences going to be paid for seeking money over people's health. And the only reason I say that, maybe you ladies would agree, and then I'll shut up, is they underpay their clinicians, all right? And then they offer like 10-minute texting sessions where, like, for those listening, that's great. You're going to need a little bit more time than that if it's texting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's probably a million other things I could say, but I agree with this point of, it puts in jeopardy strong local clinical practices like the ones that you ladies are growing.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you're right that in 10 to 20 years we see a shift away from it. It also makes me wonder, though, what happens to the small practices in that 10 to 20 years.
Yeah.
Because we really love, one of the things we love about Dallas Therapeutic Services is the culture. Like, we've worked really hard to create a culture where people learn, where they get to expand their services and their knowledge base, to be able to have support through treatment teams. And we, quite frankly, it's hard to keep up with these ginormous companies.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think it's kind of, there are pros and cons. The pro is more access, I think, to mental health treatment for a lot of people, like in maybe rural areas or, places where there aren't as many in-person mental health therapists, basically. But also it's, I don't know. I like the in-person, you kind of know who you're seeing. It's I don't know how texting therapy would work, because there's just so much, with the rapport and with the therapeutic alliance
Yeah.
that is involved with actually like talking and speaking with someone.
Yeah, yeah, and both of you touched on it, and you're like, it's kind of like, well, it's better than nothing, and at the same time, I think about kind of the premise. Not to go too much into this, but you guys are running a small practice in the area that's growing, and these big businesses, they don't have to adhere to the same regulations, right? That the everyday boots on the ground clinician does. But I think the bigger point ultimately, that always draws me towards supporting the clinicians in the community is because of the relationship piece you were touching on. It's also why I think the virtual stuff is great as an opportunity to get into therapy, but there is an element, and I felt that even as a clinician doing virtual sessions myself, like I know the difference. Yeah, I did the in-person stuff for a decade, and I've been doing the virtual stuff for a few years now, and there's a different feel to it.
Right.
Yeah, the culture is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the people that come in feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We hope they do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I always feel it. I felt it when I would go into my therapist's office.
Mm-hmm.
Now I see her virtually, so God bless. I also moved states, so thank goodness that was an option.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So what is the culture like at Dallas Therapeutic Services? What could people expect to kind of see in your guys' interactions at a team if they were going to come and seek therapy from one of your clinicians?
I bet we describe it differently.
You're the big culture person, so I'm going to let you take it.
That's true. I
It's one of
believe
her passions.
I am. I love things about culture. I believe culture is king. Like, it is a big part of running anything successfully. I would say it's a very jovial environment. We have dogs at our place. They're
I
service
saw that
dogs.
on
Yes.
the website. Yeah.
And most of the clinicians are big dog people, so you've got them coming through wanting to give treats to the dogs or wanting to bring their clients to come see them. Several of us don't wear shoes around the office. Like, we meet in the kitchen and we chat about the weekend and what we've all done. And one of our clinicians makes these amazing cookies, and she's always showing up with cookies for everyone.
Are you talking about yourself?
I was talking about Laura.
Well, Apri
Yeah,
also
I'll
makes
take
amazing
that too.
cookies and brings them, so.
Since COVID, I've been looking for a chocolate chip cookie recipe, and I finally found it.
Nice.
But Laura, she decorates these amazing cookies
It's
for every
impressive.
holiday. And so anyway, we just have these lighthearted conversations. We have people who know each other well. Even with the cookie thing, my favorite thing about Easter is bluebonnets. So Laura made bluebonnet cookies one
Yeah.
year. And so we just know each other pretty well. We'll go sit in each other's offices. So jovial. Jovial is a word I would use to describe it. What would
Yeah.
you use?
As far as like potential clients coming in, I think
She's going to go the professional route.
Yes.
not necessarily. I think informal, approachable. So this is probably the fanciest I'll ever dress, and
Yeah.
it's because I'm on your show tonight. So thank you.
Thank
but
you.
but I, in my experience, going to therapy myself, and then when I was, coming up in my therapy career, I was always kind of turned off by really kind of rigid, like formal, somebody with a clipboard dressed in business clothes. I thought, ooh, I'm supposed to, be relaxed and feel like I can curse and say whatever I want and be unfiltered. And so I think we bring kind of that informality in our, professional, but
Yeah.
informal, right? With boundaries. But so approachable so people can, come and be comfortable and feel like they can relate to the therapist. I think the dogs help with that too.
Yeah, I very much appreciated
Yeah.
that touch, and it was also a subtle reason why I gave my dog a guest appearance on the Instagram stories.
Well done.
Awesome.
Yeah. But you can find, so for those of you listening, you'll be able to find, we can put the website, it's DallasTherapeutic.com. Yeah.
Therapeutic being the hardest word ever to spell.
Yeah.
Yeah, in hindsight.
We'll make sure that's somewhere in the comments. And your guys' website is very approachable.
Oh, well, thank you.
I loved the touch where I'm like clicking around, and I do this when I bring on the guests. I want to get a feel of their website and their backgrounds and
Yeah.
who they are. And it was very easy to navigate, and it was approachable, and I loved that there was just a click and there to the dogs. I thought
They
it
have
was
their own
cute.
page.
I know.
Yeah.
I built a
Yeah.
page for them.
Yes.
I knew
They
this-
deserve it. They work hard.
Yeah, they're good listeners too.
They are.
They are.
I had a clinician friend back in the day. He had a baseball card for his therapy dog.
Oh my
And I've
goodness.
always wanted to do that for Strider someday.
Yeah.
He's not exactly he's a good listener, but he's not exactly the temperament because he gets excited.
Oh,
So he won't be my therapy dog, but I'll still get him a baseball card.
You know,
I
he
mean,
might do
Indy
okay in
gets
an
excited.
office. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I have a golden doodle. That's of the two, that one's mine. She gets very excited in the hallways, but then when she's in her office, she just like lays next to the client the whole time. It's like she knows this is my workspace.
Yeah.
So
Meanwhile, Bentley, my little miniature wiener dog, miniature dachshund, he might be excited. He might try to get the client to play fetch with him the entire time, or he'll just sleep. So
True.
he's a good listener until he is not.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you guys, just, and this is more of a curiosity question for someone that may or may not do group practice stuff down the road, do you ever get pushback from people in the community who may be like allergic to dogs or anything like that? Or have you ran into anything like that?
we haven't. We've been pretty careful. So my dog's hypoallergenic. Are dachshunds?
No, but he's
Oh, that's
such
right.
short hair, he doesn't
Yeah.
shed
Gotcha.
nearly
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
And
So-
I have a client who's allergic to dogs, and he just sits on the other side of the couch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it hasn't come up in all the years that we have been practicing. Tomorrow we'll get a client who is deathly allergic to them.
I know, knock on wood.
Yeah.
I had to ask.
I know.
Like, I don't even know why it popped into my mind. I was just like, I'm always curious
We
about
wanted to
these
jinx
things.
us.
Yeah, I guess
But
so.
actually, if someone has a phobia,
Yeah.
Yeah.
then if they're one of our clients, we can just have another therapist keep our dog for that session, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if they're not one of our clients, then they can actually use our dogs as in their exposure work with the clients. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's been cool. They start with Bentley because he's a
He's
lot
little.
easier.
Yeah.
And they work their way
old
up
and
to
calm.
Indy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indy, you said? So it's Bentley and Indy. Yeah. Yeah. Like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Indiana Jones or?
Exactly
Exactly.
like Indiana Jones. I have
There
a
you go.
poster of him in my office actually that Micah gave me.
Awesome.
it's a signed photo of Harrison Ford.
I know. She did
Autographed.
great.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very kind of you.
Yeah.
So you both, I imagine, working with the backgrounds that you do, both do a fair amount of exposure therapy.
Well, so Micah definitely does a lot more of it, and she's done a phenomenal job of training several of our clinicians. So I'll let you speak to that here in a second. I was diagnosed with OCPD years ago, so obsessive compulsive personality disorder. I actually think it's helped us a lot business-wise.
It really
Yes.
has. Thank you.
We joke a lot about how we can't get rid of it all the way because we need it.
Very productive.
Yes, I'm very productive. So I don't do as much OCD-based work or exposure-based work. It honestly touches a little bit close to home. I can definitely do some of it, and I've been through therapy for it myself. But you actually do that work, so
I do, yes. Exposure is my favorite. It's so fun. And since I treat OCD, I do exposure and response prevention, ERP,
Gotcha.
which I can get on a soapbox if I'm allowed to.
Absolutely. As we walk through this, and we'll just kind of all
Yeah.
flow with this, let's give the listeners just kind of, let's say like a rudimentary definition of like, what are we talking about when we talk about exposure therapy? Why is it important?
Sure. So, exposure, it's a form of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Basic kind of rudimentary intro. The way we think about things influences how we feel and behave, and then it can all kind of go together, right? And so, exposure is a behavioral kind of therapy. So you actually do it, right? It's experiential. And if we use the dog phobia example, if someone has, a fear of dogs, an exposure, right, would be facing that fear somehow. And that's how one of the most effective ways to treat a fear, because we tend to avoid, right? The urge is to avoid the thing that we are afraid of. But if the avoidance is causing dysfunction in our lives, like I don't know, want to date someone, but they have a dog and everything is perfect except they have a dog and I'm afraid, right? That might be a reason that you might want to treat something like that. And so exposure might look like looking at pictures of dogs, reading about dogs, watching videos of dogs, and then eventually kind of moving up to interacting with dogs.
Yeah.
So that's the exposure piece. Would you add anything to that?
no, I mean, I think it's been very effective at our office. There's a reason we've had several clinicians who have wanted to learn how to specialize in OCD, and why it's one of the, in my opinion, harder ones to find people who specialize in. Like, it's very hard to find good referrals for it.
Well, and then, exposure for OCD has an RP part, the ERP.
Yeah, well, I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure. So OCD is a diagnosis that's really misunderstood, which is why I have chosen to specialize in it, and it's really rewarding, really fun to work with. It used to be categorized in the last DSM-4 TR, as an anxiety disorder, but with the shift to 5, the DSM-5, it's been shifted into its own category because it's so different. And a lot of people think of kind of the stereotypical OCD things that you see in the media, like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm so OCD, I love to have things arranged and neat, or I'm so OCD, I have to wash my hands all the time. And that's what I could get on my soapbox about, right? Because that's unfortunately a real kind of, I don't know, watered down view of a really, what can be a disabling condition. And so OCD is obsessions, any sort of intrusive, unwanted, repetitive, bothersome thought, image, urge, anything like that causes a lot of distress. And then a compulsion is something that people might do in order to try to reduce the distress. And the compulsions are dysfunctional. People with OCD don't love doing their compulsions.
Right.
And so it's more than just washing your hands. It could be, washing hands 100 times a day to where my clients have, raw, open skin. And there's also a lot of symptoms of OCD that people are unaware of, things like harm OCD, so intrusive thoughts of stabbing their partner. And again, these are thoughts that they don't fit how the person actually thinks.
Right.
And so ERP, you expose someone basically to their obsessions, the symptoms that come along with the obsessions, the triggers, and then the RP is you take away that bad coping skill, basically, of a compulsion. And so it can be really difficult, and it requires a lot of motivation, and it requires working with a therapist that knows how to treat OCD and uses ERP, because unfortunately, traditional kind of talk therapy leaves off the RP part, and really well-intentioned therapists can accidentally kind of engage in compulsions with their clients.
Yeah.
Maybe like giving a lot of reassurance, like, oh, well, you're not going to get sick. You washed your hands enough.
Yeah.
Something like that. And so it's fun to work with because it's really effective. ERP is really effective, and it can really change people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good soapbox to get on. I'm glad you have, because the call out, especially on a show like this, is like, you go online and you see all the conversations about mental health that are more of the trendy conversation of like, ooh, like you said, ooh, I like to have things in order, I have OCD. When the reality is what we want to be more popular is the real conversations. If you're struggling with this, here's how you can find help. And I think it was even on the show a couple weeks ago where we were talking about referring clients out because traditional just talk therapy can make the OCD worse. And those are things in my early years, like, first 3-4 years, I would have never thought of.
Right.
I would have done those things, like just trying to validate through it and stabilize when it required a deeper intervention.
Yeah, like I said, really well-intentioned, right?
Yeah.
Things, but some of the kind of basic therapy approaches, they unfortunately can make OCD symptoms worse.
Yeah.
So getting the right diagnosis, that's a big plus. That's a plug for you.
That's
Diagnostic testing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really helps us gear treatment.
Yeah. Let's get on that soapbox for a moment, because it's another really important one, especially in today's climate, is making sure that diagnostics are being done appropriately. And so it's nice to have someone in the room here who does that work.
Yeah, so I was trained in that before I even got my doctorate. So that's kind of where I started. I was in residential care, working with a psychologist there who taught me just about everything I know now about how to do proper diagnostic testing, et cetera. And it really has changed so much for a lot of our clients. So we'll have clients who come in, a very common one is they think they have ADHD.
Yeah.
That's all over TikTok, the internet now, people relate to it, et cetera. when the reality is they're facing something like anxiety or maybe bipolar disorder or something along those lines, something that if they had the right treatment, they'd be able to get a lot of relief from. But they have been so fixated on it's got to be ADHD because my grandmother's friend told me about it, or there's this video that I saw, etc. We have a lot of clients who come in with their own quizzes from the internet
Yes.
that have shown them what they have.
Yeah.
So we have to do a lot of education, quite frankly, on why we're not diagnosing something or why we are, and helping them to understand why the accurate diagnosis is so important. And I really think the ADHD one is the biggest trend we're seeing right now is people
Yeah.
coming in wanting that diagnosis or wanting to understand it, or autism. That's another
That's
really
a
big
huge
one.
one.
Yeah. So both of those are two that we have a lot of clientele who come in thinking this is the diagnosis that I have. And we validate they are experiencing many things, and it's not necessarily in that realm that they're experiencing it.
Yeah, yeah. What was about a month ago? I think we had Dr. Rashonda Strickland, and she works with the different levels of treatment for autism, levels 1, 2, and 3, and we were talking a lot about that, the trends on TikTok, and we got into a little bit of a conversation about the ADHD and autism. So I'll ask you a similar question I asked her, and not from a standpoint of ooh, let's find an answer, but more so what do you think it is that made ADHD such a hot topic that everyone is I have it, or even with autism, I have that.
Mike and I actually talk about this relatively frequently,
Yeah.
why is this the trend that's going on? Personally, I think it's people want to feel connected to something. And so this idea of a diagnosis of autism, for instance, there is a very large autism community. We have that's pretty well supported, and they support each other, that neurodivergent community. Same with ADHD. And so I think the idea of feeling known or feeling accepted is a really big deal right now, especially after COVID. I think that's when I really started to see those trends pick up. People started to get very isolated. It was very hard for some people to recover from that, especially depending on the age. We see a lot of teenagers right now who think they have these disorders. And really, it has a lot to do with not developing some of those social things that they needed to in very key developmental periods.
Yeah, family of origin issues.
Possibly,
Yeah,
absolutely.
possibly. I always have kind of, because I work with so many 12-steppers, a bent towards the aspect of society that can be a little bit on the codependent bent with a lot of the symptomology. And we know the nature of codependency pulling towards isolation and loneliness and abandonment and neglect, right? And so, I would agree largely there's that aspect of well, now I can say I'm part of this group. And I think really to encourage in the proper way is well, yeah, we want you to be connected, but in the right ways.
Right.
Yeah, because meeting some of these other desires aren't going to meet the need. I think is kind of the social media stuff I see. It's the need's not being met. It's kind of just making things worse.
Yeah, I think mental health TikTok, mental health social media is kind of, I feel similarly to how I feel about BetterHelp, right? There's pros
Yeah.
and cons. So there's more accessibility for information about mental health, right? But mental health influencers, you don't know, it's like media literacy. You don't know what's accurate, what's not. And oftentimes it's really simplified kind of, oh, I leave do you leave your cabinets open every time you walk into the kitchen? Do you walk into a room and not know why you're there? You might have ADHD. I actually have ADHD, so I think these things are funny. But I think if it gets people thinking, hey, I relate to this, I might be able to maybe do something about it. I think that's a plus. It's just a matter of getting connected to a clinician who can accurately, assess, and then if it is the thing they saw on TikTok, great. If it's not, let's tell you what will help you and your symptoms.
Yeah.
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 I think it's one of my favorite parts of diagnosis testing is giving people the key that they can then go and work on whatever is actually going on.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
and-
knowledge is power.
Absolutely. And there really does seem to be, when that trend comes in, especially for adults, right? I mean, with the teenagers, we can really get a little bit deeper, or even with younger children, we can get deeper into the assessment for those things. But when the adults come in, it typically is more akin to, I've found in my practice, when I send them out for diagnostics and they come back and I talk with that psychologist, oftentimes there are the roots in the trauma that we were working on, you know, and that can masquerade around a lot as ADHD symptoms and anxiety symptoms. And so getting that more like targeted look from multiple clinicians is always really helpful.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Yeah. And BetterHelp ain't doing it. I'm kidding. I don't want to be sponsored by you guys though, so maybe I'm not kidding.
Please don't come after us.
Yeah. Yeah, don't cancel this episode. So what's on the horizon for Dallas Therapeutic Services in the area? Is there community stuff that you guys are looking forward to in the new year? You guys mentioned you're moving locations. Do we want to make sure we plug where you guys are going to be landing? Do you know?
We do know. It's been quite the journey. It's just a few miles down the road. So same zip code.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not really going to be a huge difference. Something we're really looking forward to, though, in the new space is it's going to separate a testing wing and a therapy wing.
Oh, very
So
cool.
we're going to be able to have 2 separate lobby entrances, everything for it. So it should really help us with honing this diagnostic testing piece that we're wanting to, as well as the therapy piece. Because right now, if you can imagine, it's a little disruptive when I have my sweet autism babies in the lobby screaming and someone's trying to do OCD work down the hall.
Yeah.
So we're just
Yeah.
going to separate that.
That sounds exciting.
It
It
will
is.
be, yeah.
It is
More
exciting.
exciting for the
Yeah.
therapists, I think, yes.
Yeah.
The play therapists are going to be off in a different corner
Yes.
from the adult or older adolescent therapists.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're excited about that. Otherwise, the space is going to be a normal therapy space.
Yeah.
So we're very excited, though, about being able to have it flow a little better. We were actually having dinner right before this and talking a little bit about what we're excited for in 2025. There's so many things that we could be excited for, but I'm most excited for our specialty idea that we've got.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to plug the OCD part of it, and then I'll talk about the one I'll do?
Well, sure. So when we started, and I think you were asking us this, we've started with just fully licensed clinicians, right? So therapists that can work independently without the need for supervision. But we have kind of gotten the hang of things enough over 5-6 years that we are ready to kind of introduce and bring on like younger, newer clinicians and provide specialty tracks for them for their like mentorship, specific training and things like ERP because it's such a need, and
The military first responders group.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're really excited. She's going to work on her specialty, having the OCD, the ERP. We already have a couple of clinicians who are chomping at the bit, trying to learn more about it every day. And then my specialty with the military and first responders, there are very few well-trained clinicians with this group in the DFW area, outside of course, going to the VA or something like
Yeah.
that. And so being able to offer that specialty track as well to train people, how do you work well with these populations?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're really excited about that. We're going to start internally and offer it to external sources as well if they're interested. But
Yeah.
it's one of our defense measures against big corporate virtual therapy
Yeah.
conglomerates is having, treating something specific is
Yeah.
there's a need.
Yeah, finding the lane and staying in it. Yeah, I it's interesting because there's a few things that you ladies were just touching on that I was recently talking about. It's like in regards to like even the show. It's like, well, I'm a clinician. Maybe someday I want to do the practice in that. But when I pray about it, it's like people are enjoying this. They're wanting to be a part of it. Just keep doing what we're doing, and I hear that and what you ladies are practicing. And I was talking, my significant other, she's a nurse practitioner at the VA, and we were talking about that this area has such a growing need for that. And so it's nice to see that you guys are building that and that you have a specialty in that. And I imagine you guys will build a team around those things, and we'll push students that way, as because this draws in students. We've got a few in the back who want to be in the field that I'm sure are going to want to talk to you guys.
That's
and,
awesome.
And as the years go on, it'll just be nice to push in those directions and watch what you guys end up doing with your practice.
Yeah, they're both passion areas of ours, so we're excited to be able to hopefully train some more people to be able to work with these populations.
Yeah. Yeah. So big things on the horizon, moving to a new location. I like the sound of those two different wings and separating those. I also personally, I love the sound of like that there was a clash in that, and then right down the hall from an adult processing as a kid losing his shit. I love that stuff. I love
Happens
it.
almost daily. It
does.
Yes. Or we'll get the kid who gets there early and they just scream for 10 minutes in the lobby.
Yeah,
That happens daily too.
that's amazing.
Yeah. So
To be fair, we do have our dogs running down the halls too, so we create some of the noise.
yeah.
Yeah.
We have a little bit of chaos.
Yeah, it's real.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now it'll just be a little
Approachable, like I said.
separated.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
nice.
Yeah.
I have a question that I like to ask every guest when they're new on the show, and we'll ask each of you and get your guys' perspectives on it. But if we were going to start a mental health amusement park,
Oh.
and
my
each of
gosh.
you got to build a ride, what would the ride be? What would you call it?
Okay, so I know what ride I would build. I might need help with the name. So because I do exposure therapy, and the ultimate goal of it is to increase distress tolerance, right? So increase your ability to sit with uncomfortable feelings and uncomfortable thoughts. And one of the best ways to do that is just to have somebody sit in silence and do nothing. So the ride would be you walk into a box with no stimuli and you just have to sit in there for 5 minutes. No phone, nothing at all.
Is this a ride?
Yeah.
Yeah, does the room shake?
It's a mental health amusement park. It's an exposure ride.
What would you
Maybe you
call
get a
it?
reward when you come out.
Yeah, a lollipop. We can make that happen.
Yeah, what would you call that? We're actually really bad at names. Her and I will spend days trying to figure out what to call something.
Silence. I don't
Silence.
know.
The silencer.
Oh. Has some violent undertones, but we can go with it.
Yeah, that escalated.
Yeah. What about you? What's your ride?
Have y'all been to Six Flags here in
I
Arlington?
just went on Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know the one that's in the dark? No, did you ride that one? Runaway Mountain, it's one of those, I think.
Oh,
So I like that idea because I do a lot of trauma work, and trauma triggers sneak up on us a lot of the time and you don't realize they're happening. And so, you'll be in the dark and then all of a sudden you drop 50
Yep.
feet or you turn all of a sudden or anything like that. And maybe you have a nice therapist sitting next to you, be like, how are you feeling about that?
yeah. Well, the hair's up in the air.
Yes.
What would you call it?
Ooh, I don't know. I'm so bad at names. What do you think we should call it?
I was going to say Trigger Town, but that also
Trigger
sounds
Town
bad.
also sounds terrible.
Okay.
These are all going to sound terrible, but okay, Trigger Town and
Trauma
Silencer.
triggers.
We
Trauma
shouldn't be
triggers.
allowed to name things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're committed to it now
Yeah.
when we build this park.
We'll be renaming them.
Yeah.
We'll workshop those.
Yeah. ChatGPT will help us.
By the way, while I have you, because my significant other and I, we could not understand. There's a ride at Six Flags. It's like this pirate water ride.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's like these troll things in there. And the whole time, because like her kids were with us, we're like, what the heck is this thing?
That's the weirdest
It
ride.
is the weirdest.
I don't remember what it's called, but it's so weird.
Yeah, the like kids were looking at me. They're like, "What the heck?" And I was like, "Tell them it's weird." And so they told the attendants, "It's weird." It is a
It
strange
is.
ride.
Yeah, I think they must have gotten bored that day and they didn't know what to do with something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
who knows? Yeah. So any ride we come up with is better than that.
Fair. Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Any last just takeaways with a captive audience here that you would share with them that may help them hear what they need to hear tonight? That would pull them in also towards your practice or whatever you want to share with them.
Oh, well, yes, we can always plug our website again, which is dallastherapeutic.com. Difficult to spell. But I would give a resource, since I spoke quite a bit about OCD. the International OCD Foundation, iocdf.org, is a great resource for learning more about it and getting help.
Awesome.
I would say, to piggyback off of that a little bit, my biggest plug for people would be there is specific help out there for whatever you are going through. There are resources available to you. And so I personally don't believe people should have to suffer in silence. Like, find somebody who can give you some resources. And if they can't, there are other people who can help you find good resources.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and if it's Dallas Therapeutic, that's great.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
would be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, ladies, thank you so much for coming on. It was a great conversation. And for those of you tuning in, we are going to be back here next Friday. We're actually having another panel discussion. Our panel discussion next Friday is going to be on the family disease of addiction and seeking paths to recovery. But tonight we had Dr. Apri Click and Micah Smith Lowe, and both, which we didn't talk too much about, but LCDCs as well, which is licensed chemical dependency counselors. So plenty more for us to discuss maybe the next time we sit down.
Sure.
Well, we
Thank you
greatly
very
appreciate
much.
it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we break the cycle here every Friday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. We'll see you next week.